Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Not Safe for Sunday podcast. I didn't get too into it last time, but so Ken teased something last episode that we want to talk about Donut Gate.
We have to clear the air, dude.
Hashtag Donut Gate. Listen, I was very hurt.
We know.
I was so hurt. I'm just kidding. I was not hurt, but yeah, Donut Gate was hilarious. So why don't you take Donut Gate?
All right. So we're pretty brand new to everything here,
Yes.
right? We've been on the scene a few months, and we have our social media pages, accounts going on, and so one day. I need some one-day music,
Don't
guys.
put this on me, dude.
No, I'm talking to them. I need some
Like a harp?
Yeah, I need some backstory music. Flashback music. Anyway, one day, Daniel comes to me and he goes, "Hey, did you see what Josh posted to the Not Safe for Sunday Instagram account?"
All right,
Making it sound so nefarious, dude.
It's what happened.
All right,
What do you want?
Pause for 1 minute. I was the worst person to have been given the social media rights to this podcast.
Back then,
You were the only person.
that's right. Back then, it was
Yeah,
whatever
I
you
got you.
volunteered for, you got it.
Yeah,
So you got it.
you. All right.
So I actually had seen it because my daughter kind of came to me with the same exact reaction that Daniel had.
Oh,
Dad,
my Lord.
What's up with the
who's
donuts?
posting donuts to your social media account and why? What's the point of that?
Oh.
So you were on vacation.
I was on vacation,
You were out
yep.
up in Maine, right?
Yep, I was up
You're
on
in
vacation in
You
Maine.
must have hit some just crazy
Some
hitting donuts.
Bomb
Those must have been
donuts,
some pretty
dude.
good donuts.
Bomb
dude.
donuts.
I think I saw them on 4 different social medias.
Yeah, shout out to Holy Donuts, dude. First of all, shout out to Holy Donuts. But yeah, so I was eating donuts, and I'm a big fan of donuts. Love some donuts. I got a little excited, and I'm like, I want to share this with the people. The people need to know.
The people must know.
The people must know about Holy Donuts up here in Saco, Maine.
I think we got some sponsorship or partnership
Yeah,
possibilities
yeah,
come with
dude.
Holy Donuts.
Oh, yeah.
So keep saying it.
Yeah.
Friend of the pod,
Yeah,
Holy Donuts.
Get us Holy Donuts. And so I shared it to the social media because I thought, hey, I love donuts. The people love donuts, dude.
I want what they want.
Yeah, I want to give the people what they want. And apparently, it was not what
It
they
was not what the people wanted, dude.
So more backstory. So this is still pretty early on
Yeah.
in all of our kind of relationship here in the pod.
Yeah.
And so me and Daniel probably overthought it, but we were like, how do we bring this up without Josh making Josh feel bad
Yeah.
about this?
Yeah.
You know, how do we? We don't want to deflate him totally about his donut, love.
The donut
the
debacle.
donut debacle, dude.
So yeah, Donut Gate was born,
Oh,
and
man.
so we found some creative ways to bring it up to you, which you didn't
All
get
flopped.
at all.
It
all
all
mi-
flopped.
It all missed, dude. Yeah, so I felt bad. So then I deleted the post. I deleted the donut
He
post.
kind of gave like a fine. I'll delete it.
I think I was just like, you know what? If you guys don't want it
Fine,
that
I'll
bad,
delete it.
I'm gonna pull it
Oh,
off all the
man.
socials. We won't share our joy for donuts
And you know,
with nobody.
And this sucker put it all on me. He put
Oh,
it
yeah.
all on me.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
all my fault.
Oh, yeah, he
you
said-
you brought it.
I
up.
had big feelings,
Yeah.
Carson.
He said-
I was gonna let it go.
He said, "Daniel's so pissed. I can't believe you would do this.
Out of
He's
control.
so upset.
Out of
Yeah, man.
control.
So upset.
Using me as his shield all the time.
Oh,
all the
man.
time.
I felt so bad. I was like, oh man, I didn't mean to upset Daniel. Like, I'll take it out of there.
I really wasn't that mad.
No.
I'm more curious.
I know. It was now
more
we,
questioning than
Yeah.
anything.
So you
My
could-
identity was questioning in
Yeah.
that moment.
you can be curious. That's okay. You could be curious. But so for the listeners, I love donuts. If you guys love donuts too, hit us with a hashtag DonutGate, okay? Because my donut love is being silenced now. They are silencing me. They stripped away my title of social media manager and handed out.
Yeah, I was about to say disclaimer.
He's been
Josh is no
dethroned.
longer doing social media.
I'm not allowed to do social media.
We put it
anymore.
safely in the hands of a 17-year-old.
Oh, yeah, that's really safe.
It's as safe as it can be in her hands.
It's kind of where it needs to be.
Yeah, she's got it
Someone
under
trendy.
control. She's already doing a fantastic job. So
Yeah, she's doing great.
Something like that.
It's all Ken.
Oh, come
it's
on.
all Ken.
Oh.
Listen, it's her first week of school. We're working.
Oh.
We're working around. We're working around.
She's doing real great. She's working hard.
I absolutely plan to release it to her, but takes time. Transition.
You gotta let it go, Ken.
Ken's transitioning.
You gotta let it go,
Transitioning.
dude. You gotta let it go. Yeah, I didn't. So basically, what I didn't realize, right, was we're trying to create an identity for our podcast, right? And I didn't realize that. So shame on me. I thought donuts could be part of our identity.
We love you, dude. No
We still
shame.
love
No
you.
It's
shame.
not.
Still love you.
But so I guess creating identity for the podcast is a very important thing, and something that you had preached about a couple weeks ago, Daniel, was identity. And I think I'm doing the thing where I get low when I get serious. I gotta not do that.
Dude.
Yeah, I gotta not do that. I think we as a culture, we're kind of in a identity crisis right now, and it's on many different levels. It's
Absolutely.
it's on so many different levels, and you definitely gave a great overview of what identity means and what it should mean to us. So why don't you kind of break down a little bit of what you went over, and we're gonna dig deep into that tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of identity, I saw it so much being a school teacher the last 6 years and dealing with, dealing with teenagers. I mean, even dealing with the adults in the school system, really. I mean, so much of it was crying identity like theft. Like they were robbed of their identity and trying to find it in just about anything that they could. Whatever it was, their social media likes, in drugs and alcohol, in sex, in their money, and so a lot of their identities were rooted in the things that they were doing, but still in complete crisis at any moment. Because in a group, the front would be on, but the minute I had a kid alone with me, it was breakdown.
Completely,
you would hear
person.
the mask came off and you heard everything, everything that we're struggling with, all the insecurity, all the hurt, all the pain. And, so I'd seen it over the last 6 years, and then more recently being on staff at the church. And now it's like, dealing with Christians a lot of the times, and you realize a lot of this doesn't go away.
Yeah.
The Christian or not, it's like people struggle with their identity, and, realizing that, when people are grounded in who God calls them to be, they ultimately will find their purpose in Him. And so in their being, they find their purpose for doing. But we get it confused all the time. And so much I'll see people who are like, oh, God doesn't, there's only certain people who are talented enough. Like I could never speak in front of people. I could never share my faith, or I'm not good enough to serve, or I'm not good enough for this or that. Like God couldn't use me. And so it's all this constant disqualifying ourselves, because never being rooted in who God calls us to be. He's already proud of us. He already loves us. And we didn't need to do anything. Before we did anything, He had already sent His Son to purchase us and redeem us. And so, even a couple weeks ago, we were at a youth camp in Dartmouth, and
shout out Smith Mills Camp.
Yeah, Smith Mills Camp, dude.
Right,
and
shout
so
out Smith Mills Camp.
Future sponsorship opportunity.
sponsor of the pod. So we were there, and there was this girl at the end of the service, at the end of worship and everything, and she was just over in the corner by herself at the altar, and I just saw her like crying at the altar by herself. And so I saw Casey, and I'm like, hey, Casey, can you go pray for her real quick? And so she went to go pray for her, and I turned my back. I'm having a conversation with some other people, and then I turn her back around, and our whole worship team is praying for her. Whole worship team is praying for her, and I'm like, oh my God, it filled my heart.
Yeah.
So I go over and I start praying for her, and I just lay a hand, and I'm praying, and it was like the clearest. I'm typically, Ken's kind of like your word guy when you're praying for somebody. Like God speaks to Ken a lot when he's praying for people, but I feel like I've never had it happen in such like an authentic and real way, where I was praying for her. And man, I just heard identity. No idea really what that meant for her. So afterwards, I just kind of pulled her aside and just spoke into her life, and just told her about how that word just kept coming to mind, and what I kind of was feeling like God was speaking to her. And I'm typically, again, not that guy, but what a powerful moment that was. And I think that kind of like set the wheels in motion for my sermon on identity. And that was pretty much the launching point for it.
That's powerful stuff, especially at that, because I'm young, like a preteen, young teen.
Young adult.
Yeah, young adult. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's like, because I think a lot of that identity stuff is, so you are accepted by your peers, right? Throughout grade school and all that stuff, like that's the number one goal of a lot of the children and young adults is to be accepted by these people. So you kind of do cast your values to the side a little bit at some points to be more approachable, I guess,
like a chameleon almost to blend in.
And your those values that you have are just the longer that you keep putting them on the back burner, well, the less they are your identity. You know what I mean? And you start becoming the person that you want other people to think that you are. You know what I mean? And that's it's a dangerous thing because that permeates all kinds of different aspects of life.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a major topic, and it transcends church. Like this is a topic that every single human being at some point has to wrestle with, and that's, who am I? You know, who am I? And I think what you just touched on is true, because I think a lot of how I'm going to try to formulate that is going to be based on like acceptance. And so like we can kind of try to form it ourselves and bring ourselves to a point where like, oh, well, this is acceptable. And so, you know, maybe this is who I am, or if I act like this. But especially in today's day and age, it's like you have, I mean, we're in the most lost generation and the most lost culture and the most lost world
by far
of all time. It has to be. And you see it play out just in the way that people are clamoring and hammering at you know, who they are. And they're coming at it, you know, with just such, you know, ferociousness. And if you question, you know, if you dare question, you know, who they are, you know, you're the devil himself. And so it's such an important question. And as Daniel's word, you know, had brought out a couple weeks ago, it's so important that it's answered, because if you don't know who you are, it's going to be very difficult for you to know your purpose and why you're here. And so, it's a topic that definitely it affects everybody. And if you can't answer that question, it's going to be something that's going to haunt you. You know, for a long time. And
figuring out who you are, it's a lot of soul searching. You know what I mean? It's
hard work, dude.
Because if you've spent those years putting all these other things about who you are, oh, this person liked that I was mean to that girl, so now I'm a bully. You know what I mean? So now all these years you've been mean to people, and it's like, all right, is that who you really are? So it's hard to kind of take off that cloak and just step away from all those things or all those decisions that you made to just be able to fit in. I
think you know, everybody's trying to be accepted or trying to feel loved or feel valued. And so in the vein of acceptance, you know, a lot of people are just flooding to do anything to be accepted, anything to fit in. And especially, I mean, thinking about teenagers and children, I mean, the pressure on them now more than ever in the school environment to fit in, to conform, to, you know, be kind of trendy and all that. It's so much pressure on these kids. And I would see it, and they would collapse. They would collapse under the weight, and they would even say, like, I don't want to be like this, but you know, I would have no friends if I wasn't. Right. I would literally hear those admissions out of a kid's mouth, and it's like, man, if you could just realize how loved and how valued you are, how treasured you are by God, how much He loved you, that He created you and He put you on this earth for a time and a purpose such as this. You may not understand what that purpose is yet, but once you understand your identity, it makes finding that purpose way easier. Not easy, but it makes it a lot easier than if you have your identity confused and if you don't know who He's made you to be. And so it was, you know, it's tough for kids these days.
It's heartbreaking to hear. I can't imagine being a teacher and hear somebody like, if I be who I am, who God made me to be, I won't have any friends. I'll be completely rejected, because that's the devil working. And it's sad to hear that. It's sad to hear kids have to go through that. And you said it. It's every day.
Yeah, and it's funny. We were talking before the episode started. I was sharing a little bit about I don't even remember how it came up, but how I spent a semester down at University of Maryland.
Yeah.
Right. I was like 18 going on 19. And for me, this topic is like right on the money just personally, because from about 15 to like almost 20, that was it for me. I was in like a steady state of identity crisis. I think a lot of it has to do with, not really knowing my father dying early.
Yeah.
And so as you grow into a man, into manhood, typically our identity will come from our father, for good or for bad. And so the fact that he was out of my life so early, when I started to enter into that phase, I really felt like it was a total blank canvas. I had no idea, no context, nowhere to step my foot. So I really almost became, and we weren't in the age, I mean, you know how old I am, you guys are always joking around, but it wasn't in the age that we are in now, where it's like at this heightened pitch, you know what I mean, where identity is such a thing. I just felt alone, totally alone, and I became that chameleon of like just trying to find it, and so I'm actually going to be sharing about this in a couple Sundays from now. It's interesting as it comes up. That, I would see something that looked like solid, like in a man, something solid or something that people liked or people emulated. And I would like slowly kind of like gravitate towards that, maybe in the way that I dress, I mean, in a couple of years, I went from like super preppy to super grunge and like, and when I was
I'd
down.
love to see grunge Ken.
Grunge Ken.
There's got to be a picture out there.
There's some pictures.
Did you grow out the
there.
hair?
Yeah, I was.
Dang, dude, no way.
Mutton chop sideburns.
Mutton chops.
Yeah.
Oh, we got to see this.
Jeez, dude. What were you?
We're posting on the Instagram or something.
He was auditioning for Gangs of New York.
So, so that was kind of like the I don't want to say the climax, 'cause that's a high point. It was like the absolute low point for me is when I was there.
Yeah.
Because I was lonely, I was broke, I didn't know who I was. I was doing some really just questionable stuff, and kind of almost to the point where it's like, not that I was suicidal, but I didn't really care because I really was just in this crisis for so long. It reached this point where it's just like I didn't really care anymore. And it's just a black hole. It's a black hole.
Dude, the more I talk to you, the more I'm like, I feel like our stories of how like growing up are very like similar. And it's funny because I went down right around the same age, like 18, 19. I went down that same exact path. And I had my father in my life, but I was at that stage now trying to be rebellious. Like, I've been told what I'm going to do my entire life, and that's not where I'm at. That's not what I want to do. So now I'm going the other way, and I'm trying to do everything I can to be opposite of that almost. And it's not who I really was, because then I end up hanging around with gang members and putting myself in these situations where I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm uncomfortable here. Like, I know I shouldn't be here, but I'm just doing it, and I'm doing things just because I want to be accepted by these people.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's like so fruitless. And something you just said that we're at a fever pitch for this, right?
Yeah.
So now at that point, there's not especially when you were growing up, no offense, there's not as much, there's no social media.
Running with George Washington.
You know what I mean? There's no internet yet. You know what I mean? So, no, I'm just kidding.
That's accurate, but go ahead. We were almost there.
Stop the show.
We were almost there.
Shut it down, dude.
Stop the show.
Bill Gates was still in his garage.
He's still in the garage. Ask Jeeves hadn't even been made yet.
Yeah, Jeeves wasn't the guy.
Yeah, Jeeves. This is pre-Jeeves.
Wow. A world of pre-Gs, dude.
But so now just think about, like you were just saying before, all the young people now. So now you have your identity in school. You have your identity on Facebook. You have your identity on TikTok. You have your identity on, if you're doing online gaming, you have identity to those people.
Yeah.
So now we've created all these different arenas where I have to behave differently here.
Yes.
I have to behave differently here, and here. And we wonder why when on Sunday people putting on their best show in church and then going out and doing the same thing they've been doing out in the world. You know what I mean?
We live in the age of personas.
Yeah.
You know, like I would have kids that like, would not talk in class. And then all of a sudden I hear like they have like a YouTube channel that they're like this content creator.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the kids shows me it and I'm like, I've literally maybe never heard this kid speak. How are they in front of a camera like they're a professional actor?
Yeah.
Like what? So it's so funny. We create these personas in different forms, and like that is like identity crisis at its finest.
100%.
It's almost like personality disorder. It's like when we have to create and keep up with all the personas, all the images everywhere in our life. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's exhausting. It's defeating. And then ultimately, it leads you down a darker path because you definitely don't know who you are because you've spent so much time building up all these personas in all these different arenas of your life. Now, you don't know who you really are.
Right.
And so where do you go from there?
And you can see the progression because, like, just personally speaking, again, for me, it really devolved into the point where I really didn't even like myself. And again, I don't know that I was ever at that, like, suicidal point. I never really felt that way, but I just had this disdain for myself. Like, I couldn't be proud of me because I didn't know who me was.
So good.
Yeah. I didn't know, and so it got so now you can see, like, now where there's the pressure now, especially because of social media, and all these things to be somebody and who are you and most of the personas on social media are fake anyway. So now the
100%.
pressure that I'm not like them and I'm not, they look happy, they look fulfilled, they look like they have purpose, they look like they have talent. The pressure now is just crushing these kids, from the outside in. They're going to implode, and that's why suicide rates are through the roof. That's why addiction rates are through the roof. That's why mental health crisis is through the roof. Because me going through it, I didn't have a lot of the external pressures that these kids have now. But I remember it got to that point. It was like, I don't even like me. I hate me.
Yeah.
Because I don't know me. I don't know who I am.
Yeah. I can relate with that 100%. I got to the point where I'm like, I don't really, like you said, I wasn't suicidal, but I was at the point where, like, I don't really even care if I live or die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's just so empty. It just felt so empty because, at the end of the day, there you are empty because you don't even, like you said, you don't even know who you are, what you're about. And the something that I really keyed in on during your message, Daniel, was where are you finding your identity? What do you find your identity in? You want to dig in on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is in your default, right? When adversity comes, when trial comes, when pressure comes, like, what is your default? And that I would say is where you find your identity. And so when the pressure cooker turns and, like, you are feeling the pressure of life, where are you running to? What are you running towards? And if it's the bottle for escape, I'd say, you're finding your identity in that alcohol. If it's lighting one up, smoking a joint just to kind of, I can finally, it makes me feel calm. It makes me feel at peace. Well, why aren't you calm? Why aren't you at peace?
Right.
What's going on? There's stuff in the outside. It's like we're always in our life treating the symptoms. We're never getting to the root. We're never getting to the root. And so there's a million things to treat symptoms. We can medicate all day long with anything. We can medicate with escaping, burying our heads in our phones and shows. And there's plenty of stuff to keep us entertained for a lifetime.
Right.
Never mind a day or a couple hours. Like, you just get into, you turn on your phone and you can get sucked into the vortex before you know it. An hour's gone by and you're like, holy mackerel, like, I can't, where did that go? But, there's so many things we can use to treat the symptom. But the greater issue and really the disease is having a misrooted identity. So what's our default? Alcohol, drugs, sex, like all these things, they don't actually make us feel better when we're putting all of our eggs in that basket. Relationally, you get in a relationship, then you put all your identity in that person. Well, you're going to be, that's going to collapse eventually. It's going to collapse because that person's going to fail you because people fail. That person's going to disappoint you because people disappoint. And so when that happens, your whole world is going to crumble because you found your identity in this person, not in who you really are, not who God's made you.
And that can go like a million different ways because you have like whether it's self-inflicted or it's external pressure from parents or whatever, but like somebody who's a student, and all their identity is in like getting their grades and I need to I need to graduate at the top of my class because I'm this. I am an academic. I'm going to be this. But eventually you're not going to be a student. And then it goes to the job. Well, what's your job? Well, I'm this because I have to succeed, because I have to get to the top. I have to climb the corporate ladder.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be that someday. You're going to retire, and then the marriage thing, relationship thing. Well, eventually, your spouse is going to die, your kids, I'm a parent. Well, they're going to move out someday.
Right.
And so it's always going to go, if you don't have something that transcends all of that, if there's not something, as you had said, deeply rooted, more authentic, that's deeply rooted in you, identity crisis will be just a cycle, you know what I mean? That you're going to go from cycle to cycle to cycle. And so
in the seasons of life, there's plenty of stuff we can find our identity in, because it's always a new season.
Yeah.
Like Ken was just saying, all those different seasons, from childhood to adulthood, student to career, son to father. It's like we can find our identities in all of these things.
Yeah.
But they're all shifting paradigms at the end of the day. And so we need to build our identity on something that doesn't shift. And that is the truth, the word, and that is Jesus Christ, the rock.
Amen, brother.
And that's like, for me, if anybody were going to ask me like, well, how did it change for you? It's so simplistic, but it's also kind of hard to articulate because of how simplistic it is. Because really, when I accepted Christ, he was exactly who I was looking for, but I didn't know I was looking for him, but I needed him so desperately, so empty, so much of a void. When I accepted him, and that simple prayer, when I just asked him to be my Lord and forgive my sin and live in my heart, after praying that, like immediately, almost immediately, I just felt secure in who I was. Not like nobody gave me a file folder, with like, you are. No, it just, I couldn't articulate. It's not like, oh, I'm this now, but I just felt the security that it's okay and it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
I am who God created me to be. I maybe can't articulate that and write you a paragraph about that.
Yeah.
But I was okay.
Yeah.
And from there, as you just walk that faith out, that's when you start being able to learn and grow. And it's like, okay, God's my father. Like, wow, wait a minute. That's a revelation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He created me. That's my origin. Jesus was sent, to take my place so I wouldn't have to be buried under the weight of my sin, so I could have life. So God loves me enough to. So you learn that as you go. But honestly, the second I accepted Christ, it was okay.
Wow.
It was okay. That was enough.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really explain what happened or articulate at the time, but that was enough. And it was going to be all right after that. And it didn't matter then who I needed to be.
Yeah.
Because I belonged to God, and I realized it for the first time.
That's so good. What you were just talking about, that's where I really started like my deeper thinking about, well, if you're a student, you don't identify as a student. It can apparent, because what do you mean, Daniel? I am a dad. Like, of course I'm a dad.
Yeah.
So what if my identity is not that? What is it? And I think it's not something. The more I thought about it, I thought it's not an identity per se of what those things are. They're roles within the identity that you have.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
So whether it's a student, whether it's a parent, police officer, pastor, whatever, those can be roles that you have.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And with those roles come different characteristics and responsibilities that's expected for the identity of that role itself.
Yeah, it's not even saying that those things aren't like critically important and that you're not all those things. You're a son.
Yeah.
One day you're not going to be a son, though.
Right. Yep.
And so I think it's not that those things aren't important or that I'm not all those things, but it's just the end all be all is that if my whole identity was based on that, my world's going to get wrecked someday.
Definitely.
Right.
Because I won't be that someday.
Right.
Now who am I?
Right.
And again, we go across the board: student, professional, husband, wife, parent, and all those things.
Right.
So I think it's not that they're not important or that we aren't all those things. We're a lot of things, you know what I mean?
Right.
But where's my identity found, though?
Right.
Is there something that it transcends those things? There's something that deeper and more firmly rooted than that? Because then one day I'm going to die, and then I have the afterlife. Well, then who am I?
Yeah.
No, I'm serious, because if I came from God and I'm going back to God, That's the bookends.
Yeah.
That's who I am. I'm
Yeah.
a child of God. The other things are the incredible things that God created us to
Yes.
enjoy
Yes.
in this life.
That
Are all reflections of Him.
Mm-hmm.
Because we see in the Trinity, Father, we see Son, we see Helper, the Holy Spirit being the worker, He has the job. We can relate to all that. So He created us in His image to live out all these things. But who am I
Right.
in the midst of that?
Right.
That's the deeper question that the whole world is seeking.
Because I thought about that part too. Because I'm like, so within those roles, let's call them roles.
Mm-hmm.
Within those roles, God gave instruction on how to be a
Absolutely.
how to be a parent,
Absolutely.
how to be a husband.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? How to be a leader within the church. There is
Absolutely.
He's laid it out for us, and so for us to enjoy and to be successful within those roles. You know what I mean? But like you said, those aren't our identity. Those are things that we partake in as we are children of God.
And I can speak to that because I know pastors who their identity was in what they did, and then they age out and they're not pastors anymore, and they don't know who they are.
Yeah. Completely.
So even in a role that's so that important, you know what I mean? Like the work of God.
Right.
But guess what? You're not going to be that forever.
And I would say like those roles, any one of those roles are really a part of your purpose of why God has placed you here.
Yes.
To be a father.
100%.
To be a father,
Mm-hmm.
that's not your identity, but it's part of your purpose that God has given you. And our purpose isn't a light thing. Purpose is what God has called us to do. Identity is who He has called us to be, who we are. It's who He's called us.
Yeah.
And so, our purpose is what He's called us to. And so, the beauty of being a father, of being a friend, of being just whatever He's called you to do, a teacher, exactly. Like you have an influence, you have a sphere of influence, you have people. I said it on the pulpit, and people kind of took it offensive a little bit, I think, by their reaction. I didn't mean it offended, but I said, "Thank God I'm none of you."
Yeah. No, that was good.
Thank God I'm none of you.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be any of you.
Right.
Because if I were trying to be you, that would mean everything God's purpose for me is out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And so I miss out on everything that God's purpose for me. Even the blessing that's on the other side of fulfilling that purpose. Because I'm not rooted in who God's made me. Because I'm too busy trying to be every single one of you. Trying to be what you're into. Trying to be, a chameleon. And so there's never fullness. There's never abundance of life and joy. Because we're trying to be everything else besides what God has called us to be.
And then you're not using the skills that God's given you, the characteristics that He's given you, the giftings that He's given you, trying to be somebody else. You're not able to, those are never able to be fulfilled because I can't be Ken because he has a completely different skill set than I do. You know what I mean? So you're 100% right.
Yeah, and I think, again, as we've been echoing, like everything starts inward and works outward. Like if you're not satisfied with who you are, how can you possibly be satisfied with what you do or accomplish, or how can you find your purpose in that?
Right.
And the as we've been leading up to this, this talk, the chapter and verse that sticks out to me is, I think it's one of the most important questions asked and answered in the New Testament is Matthew 16:15, where Jesus takes the disciples to the worst neighborhood, let's just call it that way.
Takes them to the hood.
Caesarea Philippi, and where there's like pagan worship that involves prostitutes and sexual stuff, and it's just like, it's the red light district of the time. And he says, who do they, like just the people around, the crowds, who do they say that I am? And, they say, well, some say you're, like a prophet. Some say you're Elijah. Some say you're like almost like the reincarnation of John the Baptist.
Yeah.
And then he asks point blank, who do you say that I am? And Peter, in 15, he speaks up and he says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And it's like, that was like my coming to Jesus moment. That is the coming to Jesus moment, because when you declare, when you know in your heart who God is and who Jesus is specifically, what he means to you. Is he a prophet? Is he a good teacher? Is he some guy that lived? Or is he the Savior? Is he the Christ, the Son of the living God?
Yeah.
If he's that, that's where your identity comes from. That's when it becomes realized.
Yeah.
And he tells them as much. He says, blessed are you, Simon, flesh and blood didn't reveal this to you. My Father in heaven did. And I call you Peter, which means stone, and on this rock I'll bet. So he declares who Jesus is, Jesus declares who he is. And so it's in really coming to the full knowledge of who God is in that revelation that our identity is born. And when you can answer that question, you're all set.
Yeah.
And the satisfaction of knowing who you are, that's priceless. Nothing else can compare to that.
It's so important knowing who you are, I think, because if you know 1,000 different people, everybody's going to identify you differently. They're going to say, friends I grew up with, oh, he's a basketball player. Mm-hmm. Friends I have now, never seen me play basketball. You know what I mean? The people at my work.
The guy with the laugh.
Yeah, exactly. He's the guy with the laugh. People that never heard me laugh are never going to say that. You know what I mean? At work, he's the hard ass. Like he's the one that's cracking the whip around here. In my regular life, it's like he's a kind, generous guy, whatever it is. So it's like, no, you have to determine who you are for yourself. You know what I mean? And that is determined, like you said, within understanding your relationship with God. I'm sorry. And it's because I think there's an expectation too from other people of, like, for you, Ken, as a pastor, there's an expectation from everybody else that sees you as the pastor of how you're supposed to act and behave. You know what I mean? And
man, are they surprised when they
you're not wrong, but I think that's probably why we see, you kind of hit on it a little bit last episode, but we see these pastors that are being kicked out of their churches and being persecuted or prosecuted for crimes that they're committing,
having moral failures.
Moral failures.
Ken hates that.
I hate that phrase.
Why do you hate that phrase?
Call sin sin.
Call it what it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's become the generic term for when somebody sins, and it's like they're so special, these pastors, that nobody can know what they did, you know, when you're supposed to confess your sin, you know what I mean? And so we chalk it up to moral failures, which is this ambiguous, ridiculous term of, we know what you did, but you're just, you're going to sneak away. You know, while you tell the congregation that they should confess their sins to each other, that they might be healed from James, they back, they sneak away out of the pulpit and out of the church. No, it's terrible. On another note, but in the same subject, you made an excellent point, because there is intense pressure for a pastor that there's like this picture of what they should be, and so if I wasn't safe and secure in my identity, the pressure, the temptation to want to be like that one and that one and that one and that one and that one, the one who has the big mega church, or the one who's super eloquent, or the one, I mean, it's endless. And so to be safe and secure in who you are, like I said, that's priceless. You know what I mean? I don't have to act out of myself. I don't have to lie. I don't have to put on a facade. I don't have to act one way in front of this person, act another way in front of another. I can just be me. And that's the greatest peace you'll ever experience in your life.
100%. You hear about these pastors that are out there and they're showing off their Bentleys and all this thing, and I'm like, where's anybody holding them accountable? Yeah. You know what I mean? Where's the accountability? And is it because the congregation is not comfortable with themselves? Like, they don't think that they can go and say anything to that pastor because now I'm holding him on this he's holier than me. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's where an identity crisis comes as well, because like I said before, the Bible lays out how leaders in the church should behave. Yeah. And how building the like the elders, right? Yeah. So there is checks and balances, you know what I mean? And it just kind of goes out the window sometimes, and we wonder why people are like, oh yeah, those guys, they're hypocrites, dude. Like this guy's been stealing money from his congregation his entire, for all these years. And there's no accountability for him. And how long did these people sit and just watch it happen? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. To me, it's just wild. Another big thing within the culture is gender identity, right? We've talked a little bit the last episode about gender identity, right? So is it just more of the confusion of who am I as a person? I mean, what are you guys' thoughts on some of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like we're saying, it's the ripple effect.
Yeah.
You know, if I don't know who I am, and then I have a generation of choruses now, you know, or chorus of voices, I should say, that are all, you know, giving me these different options. I mean, everybody is prone to confusion.
Yeah.
Everybody is prone to, you know, losing your way, losing your head a little bit. I don't know a person who hasn't, at least somewhere in that 15 to 23 year range, you know, that age range, that hasn't gone through some sort of
Right.
crisis,
Absolutely.
identity crisis, or just trying to figure themselves out. I mean, that's just part of life. And so now when you have these different philosophies and ideologies now that are really pushing the fact that, you know, everything is totally subjective, you know, down to even what your gender is and sexuality. I mean, that's just going to infuse just so much more confusion,
Right.
that you know, that nobody needs, because you're already so confused at that age. And so then goes into exploration of that. And if I start stapling myself to that type of philosophy and ideology,
Yeah.
you know, it's hard to come back from that. I mean, we're talking about an ideology that even, you know, this promise that somehow I could be fulfilled, that I was born wrong, and if I change that, I'll somehow be fulfilled, you know, where we're lopping off body parts and doing irreparable damage and harm, irreversible things to my own body.
Mm.
That's a huge philosophy, a dangerous one, and again, all with just this promise of you'll find yourself.
Well, if you look at, look at the suicide rates in transgenders.
Mm.
They're astronomical. And it's like, we live in a world that tells us you can be anything you want. And yeah, we can chuck that up to being like that sounds like a pretty good thing. I can be anything I want. Like, that's encouraging. But when you keep echoing that over a lifetime and keep like pushing, you know, we're pushing this agenda almost like it's at the forefront of everything to be accepting. Like, oh, again, we said last episode too, is like, if you even voice an ounce of disagreement, it's hatred and bigotry.
Yeah.
You can disagree without hating somebody. You can disagree without compromising your love for someone. But it's like we live in this world of you can be anything. And so you even have like these little, like, I don't know if you guys have seen it, kind of makes me laugh, but it's these little like horse groups. Like they ride their
hobby horse.
They're hobby horsing. they're hobby horse and gallop around and jump over each other and stuff. And it's like, you know, everyone's just looking for some place to belong and something to be. And so
you're talking the hobby horse crowd?
I'm sorry, dude.
Sorry for all those hobby horse listeners.
Hobby horse listeners, if you're out there, show some love.
Hit us with a like and subscribe, hobby horses. It's wild because I think one of you just said it, but you have to accept it. The culture has told you that you have to. I have to accept that you identify as a horse. I can see you're not a horse. You know what I mean? I can see that you're not a horse. Just say nay.
Nay.
But and so instead of like wanting to have, not like you're afraid of the backlash and afraid of the argument that might come from you saying, hey, you know, you're not a horse, right? It gets avoided altogether. And so now there's these pockets of different people. There's horse people. There's the furries. There's all that. People identifying as cats or whatever it is. And it's like, not only do you have to accept it, you have to call me Mr. Mittens.
Mr. Mittens.
So call me by my cat name. And it's dangerous because they're like I just talked before, there's no checks and balances. So everything's just completely out of control, because if nobody's able to say, hey, you know, you're not a horse, like, let's talk about this. What do you actually feel? Why do you feel like you need to do this? And then you get to the root of probably a lot of transgenderism and things like that. You get to the root because you're having a real open conversation to find out well, where did something go wrong that made you feel like you can't be who God made you to be?
Yeah, and I think that this touches on a lot of the different conversations we've had over the many episodes, you know, where the further you get away from an objective truth, right? You know, the further you're going to go down this rabbit hole of confusion. And again, it will be a black hole. It will never, ever, ever be satisfied. And so, you know, you get away from God, and Liz, it's easy to make fun, and we're, you know, it's so easy to do that, and we all do it in some way, but my, you know, really, our hearts should really break for these people in this situation, because they're just desperate to find out who they are, and they've believed a lie, and they've been, you know, hook, line, and sinker into that. And so as a culture, as a people, as a nation, as a world gets further and further and further away from the truth of God, this is what you're going to get. And so not only the people that are suffering through it, but like the so-called, you know, leaders of, you know, of a community or a school or a government, you know, that for some reason have just decided, like, okay, we can't, you know.
The pressure's on.
The pressure's on. Okay, litter boxes in the bathroom for you. You know, and
that's a serious thing.
But that's
dude.
a real.
No, it's not.
Yes,
that's
it
a real
is.
thing.
No,
in Fall River,
yes, it is.
In
Yes,
Fall
it is.
River,
Yes,
there's
it
a
is.
school that was having to go to their legal team to talk about whether or not they legally have to put in litter boxes in the bathrooms for the furries.
You thought I was joking.
It's not a joke.
I thought you were joking.
No.
I thought you were joking.
Very serious.
In multiple places, it's happened. By the way.
Oh man.
And so you know, our heart breaks though, because it's like I don't think we should blame anybody for being confused, because as I said before, everybody's been there, right? We shouldn't poke fun at people that are really, you know, searching and confused, because that's just a normal, natural part of life. But if we, you know, and even disagreeing with God, I have no problem somebody being mad at God. I'm struggling. I don't think I was this way. I think I should have been made this way. That's a real thing. That's a real conversation. Those are real feelings that people had. I mean, like I said, I used to look up at God that I didn't even know if I believed in and say, you know, why did you make me? You know, I hate me. Who am I? You know, that's a real thing. But can't we help people through that? Yeah. You know what I mean? Can't we guide people through that? Can't we counsel people through that without, again, hearkening back to last episode, without, you know, making them the bad guy, ostracizing them, protesting against them? Like, is there a place that we can go and we can meet them and help them through this? It's hard just because of how loud, you know, the voices are that are cheering them on and trying to lead them this way.
Right. And it goes back to that root that we talked about before. How can we lead them back to God? Understanding He is who created you.
That's right.
And this is where your identity lies. The path to get them to that point is probably a little harder than it should be, especially with the pressures from society now, and like you said, all those people cheering you on, and not only all those people cheering you on, but then all those other people, or maybe the same people, saying, oh yeah, don't go there, don't go to the church for those answers, because all they're gonna do they're just gonna judge you and all this stuff. So it just adds that extra layer of these people not getting to the root.
Absolutely.
And Ken, you made a good point. I think yesterday, it was even just a passing point in the second service, and you said, like, the church is the last bastion of community. It's of true community. It's the last place of true community. And so it's more important now than ever for us to be the church.
Yes.
So what does that mean to be the church that God has called us to? And it's loving, it's being there, it's holding accountable, it's having hard conversations, but it's also accepting those who are different, who are struggling, and not just with the sins that we feel like we can handle, or the things that we feel like are, that's okay enough to talk about, but about even these sexual struggles of identity and gender and all these misplaced things. You know, the church needs to be the one leading the charge of loving these people back to normal life, loving these people back to their God-given identity, and helping them find their purpose and why God has created them. You know, and so we all struggle with stuff. All of us. None of us is blameless. And so in our struggles, imagine if God had pushed us away. You know, where would we be? And so
Still lost.
as the church, you know, sometimes we can be the most judgmental. And we got to make sure that we do heart checks. And that's why we talked about this. And leadership needs to set the pulse and the pace. You know, if the church can't be a hospital for the broken and the hurting, we've already lost the battle.
Yeah.
And we need to be there when some people that are going through this hit the breaking point before they make that terrible decision to end their life. You know, that's where we need to be in triage, you know, because I'll tell you what, when it happens where I went through a surgery, or I took some steps that I can't take back, and I realized it was a mistake, they get ostracized from their own community. Yeah. Like they left the cult. Yep. You know what I mean? And they become the enemy. Yeah. They really do. Yeah. I mean, I hear stories about it all the time. They become the enemy of the cult because they dared speak against the doctrine of the cult. And so that's where the church needs to come in with unconditional love and really love people through that breaking point, that restoration point, that healing point. And the amazing thing is that even people, and again, I've heard stories like this, where even people that took some steps that could not be reversed, yet somehow they still find true identity and purpose when they reach God, even though they may.
No one is too far.
No, exactly.
Not a one.
And so, the even if they have what people consider deformities because of what they've done, yet and maybe they don't resemble that gender they were born with, but yet they still find purpose and identity in God. And that's what we need to do. We, drop the signs, drop the pitchforks and the torches, and pick up, the love.
Starts with just a simple conversation. And it doesn't even have to be. You've said it before. It doesn't even have to be about God.
No.
You know what I mean? It's just because we're all Christians. You can go have a conversation with somebody. Doesn't have to be about God. The more that you conversate with that person,
absolutely, now
you're building a relationship.
There's a relationship there.
Maybe one day they find out that you're a Christian. Oh, you're not what I thought Christians were.
Oh yeah.
And now their whole life is their whole mindset of what Christianity is and all these things has completely changed just because you just were kind.
Dude, it's awesome. It's awesome. Like being a teacher, I know like outwardly you're not at liberty to really share the gospel with kids, but man, you can be the gospel on display to kids in such an incredible way. And it's so awesome because the last 6 years I would go into school and I'd pray, God, like use me, show me, let me be the love of Christ to these kids. Like let this classroom be a home, a place of peace, a place of love for them, and let it point back to you. They may not see it now, but God, I hope that one day they do. And so after they graduate and they'll reach out to me like on social media, or they'll add me or on social media later, and I accept, and they get to see like my foundation is in Christ. And I'm firmly rooted, dude. And now there's like at least 4 or 5 students coming to the church on rotation or regularly.
Yeah.
Because of the testimony of just being loved and seeing a difference. I mean, we're seeing more and more. There's even other teachers in our congregation that like just the love and being so different, just being loving and appreciative and supporting and encouraging of these kids. And they're seeing that. They're seeing it. And it's like, why is that different?
Yeah.
Why is that different? And when they finally discover the reason, it points back to Christ. And now they get to walk in their God-given identity. And so do not neglect what God has called us to be his hands and feet.
That's right.
To just love people. I mean, I think we try to overcomplicate it like we do with everything.
Yeah.
As humans, we try to overcomplicate it. But it is really so simple. If we were the church and we just loved like God loved us, if we walked out that love in such a purposeful way to people, where we were talking to them, we were loving them, we were serving them, we were honoring them, man, I think we'd have a completely different world. Because the church was on, they were on their mission, because we were rooted in our identity of who God has made us to be.
It's funny you say that because we don't realize it, but we often confess our faults and our deficiencies and our fears without even realizing it. But, somebody hears you and they say, well, who am I to do that? And it's like right there, they're confessing their own identity crisis.
Yeah.
Who am I?
Absolutely.
Who am I to do that? Well, if God's your father, that's who you are.
You have no more. I have no more privilege than you.
That's
I'm
right.
as much a son as you are a son
That's
or a daughter.
right. And so you just need to go tell somebody about your father.
Yep.
Who am I to do that? Well, you're God's son or God's daughter, so go do it.
Yep.
And so absolutely. I mean, I guess we're bringing this home, right? The knowing who you are will determine everything.
Yeah.
It really will, and it will determine whether or not you go, as you're saying, into your God-given purpose and fulfill that.
And we can waste our lives. We can waste a lot of time, a lot of energy when we're not living on purpose because of our identity crisis.
That's what I was going to say is that as we're kind of wrapping this conversation up, where do we start? Where does somebody start? And I think you hit on it, is starting to just find out who God is.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta find him for yourself. Going to church alone is not going to cut it. Just kind of being a casual observer. It all starts there, and that's cool.
Yeah,
no matter how you got there, whether you were raised there, whether somebody invited you, but at some point there's got to be something that pulls on the inside that says, I need to know for myself, because it will never be authentic or real, and you'll never have that that foundation of knowing unless you seek it out. Because if you seek, you'll find.
Oh, yeah.
1,000%. I mean, he won't do you wrong. But until I'm ready or until I can bring myself to that point, I'll never know. And if I don't ever know who he is, I will never know who I am.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Importance of community, like healthy community, godly community that's going to love you, hold you accountable. Accountability, I mean, we say it, I think, every single episode, how important accountability is. Don't just surround yourself with a bunch of yes people who are going to tell you you're right all the time. You'll never grow.
Yeah.
You'll never grow. And all the people who tell you you're right, well, when you're wrong, they're going to run. They're going to run. They're going to abandon you because it won't really matter. They've just been telling you you're right. And so get people, real people in your life who are going to hold you accountable. That is, I think, huge, because I know some of the moments I've walked out where I have struggled in trying to find who God has made me and what he's called me to. It was having godly community, godly friends like Ken and Steve holding me accountable, holding me up when I feel like I couldn't hold myself up, kind of the Weekend at Bernie style, you know what I mean? Like holding me up and making sure that I was still going. And it's hugely important.
And I think that's part of our identity is we are meant to hold each other accountable, right? And everybody came back from Honduras with that new saying, right? Don't let your inaction is preventing somebody else's.
Your procrastination is delaying someone's
breakthrough.
That's the one. That's the word.
I think it's the same thing for us as believers, but it's a different saying. I think procrastination of holding somebody else accountable is causing their downfall. You're causing their demise by not holding the person that you care about. I call you a friend, I call you a brother or a sister. Well, if I'm not holding you accountable the way I should be, well, I'm just adding to your demise, and you're gonna sit there and watch you spiral until it's an absolute wreck, and then say, oh, look, can you believe that this is where Daniel's at now? Like, wow, he used to be whatever. And it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame. We got to get better at that part.
Absolutely.
We definitely have to get
that
better
part.
at that part.
That part.
That part.
That part.
Is that a thing?
That's the thing, dude.
That's the thing. You got it. Nice job.
I'm so proud of you, man.
You did it.
What's on the tables, boys? What's on the tables?
What's on the tables? Daniel, what do you got over there?
Well, I'm really proud of my my PlayStation 2. This is actually my childhood PlayStation 2 right
original?
here. The OG.
Oh, man.
So in this loft studio, I found it because this is at my parents' house, and on the other side of this is their storage room, and so this was back there chilling, and so I brought out my my faithful PS2. If you're an Xbox lover, just unsubscribe right now. Sorry. And I got a little Chewbacca, and I don't even know what's on the other side. Is that a plant?
You got a plant. You got a
I
plant
got,
there.
I got Chewbacca.
Is that a ficus?
Little bobblehead.
You got a
ficus.
You got a ficus.
You got a plant.
Yeah,
Oh,
Ken's
man.
table's a little bit more dressy. Oh,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say dressy, but it's better than the dysfunctional bird.
I had a dysfunctional drinking bird last time. This time is actually kind of fitting, I think. I can tell a little story with this one. I can be metaphorical. So I, I think it goes into what we're talking about.
so
So, guys, boys, play the Full House music. End of the Full House episode. Oh no, you guys don't know what that is. Brady
do you mean?
Bunch. No, you guys don't know what that is.
Whatever happened to predictability?
So
The milkman and the paper boy.
I wanted some succulents,
Yeah.
I wanted some nice plants, and but I wanted to do something a little different, right? So I'm like, I saw some of these Mario warp pipes.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna put them in there. So of all places, I found it on Poshmark. I had never ordered anything on Poshmark.
Strangest place to find.
Strangest place ever. But
decor item in the world.
it was $10. It was shipping. It would be like, I don't know, 16 or whatever. Like, okay, I'm gonna get it. Took forever. Finally arrives, and it's the person didn't even wrap it right. They didn't package it right. It came in three pieces.
Three is better than one.
I was super disappointed
the
about
Postal
it.
Service must have shipped it.
Super. There you go. Absolutely. Super disappointed, and so I was like, kind of doing the claims. So I get my money back and all that. I get my money back. I'm about to throw it in the garbage, and I'm like, you know what? I can fix this. So I glued it all together. I mean, literally.
Is it actually glued?
Yeah.
That's the one?
This is the one.
Dude, give it a spin.
Look, see, when you see, the metaphor is that this thing was created to be a warp pipe, but through the circumstances of life, it became broken.
Wow.
And so you just need somebody who cares to glue it together. I took some Patch Master. I filled in like the cracks, the chips.
Arts and crafts.
Little arts and crafts. I found the paint. I color matched the paint.
No, you did not.
Yes, I did.
Color matched
I color matched the paint.
Oh
I painted it back up.
gosh.
And I made it beautiful again. And that's what God does. So it has some scars like we all do, through life.
Couldn't tell.
But guess what? Still functional.
That is a heck of a
has a
metaphor.
purpose.
You could tell you're a pastor, dude.
Yeah.
Just made a sermon analogy.
You
out of a
landed
warp
that
pipe.
plane real good.
has a purpose. Shout out to Grace, my wife, for helping me, with
Oh,
the aesthetics
man.
of the succulents.
Thank you,
so.
Grace.
Oh,
That's so
Josh,
cool.
I want you to be as poetic about what's on your table.
So this is
Logan.
a bust. Of,
Yeah, it's a bust, all right.
It's a bust.
Yeah,
That's a bust.
yeah, no,
all right.
that's I'm a big time X-Men guy. So yeah, I have a nice 3D printed old man Logan bust.
That's Wolverine, by the way.
Oh,
I don't know
thanks,
if you know
Wolverine.
that.
Thank you. I have not watched any. Is that,
Okay, yeah,
I don't even want to say Marvel. Is it Marvel?
It is.
Okay,
It
all
is.
right.
He looked
It
more
is.
I don't know if
confused
it's
than
Marvel,
usual,
DC. I know the face, dude.
That is Wolverine.
People used to call me Wolverine because these patches never grew in on my beard,
Yeah.
so I used to get that all the
but
time.
I'm sure that's
Give me
why.
a hey bub.
Dude, don't even start.
But yeah, so big time X-Men guy. Love Wolverine as a character. So I got that cool bust a couple years ago, I think, at a like a Comic-Con type deal. So that was pretty cool. And then I got a little eucalyptus plant. And
Does it smell?
nope, it's fake.
Well, I'm going to challenge you guys to keep it fresh because I am going to be updating every episode.
Oh,
so.
listen.
I already see you have a little pile in the corner, dude.
I got a pile.
Ken's
I don't know
pile.
what the mouthwash is doing over there, but there's mouthwash over there too.
I don't feel I'm profound if I don't have good breath. So. Fresh breath.
Shout out to Scope.
Yeah. Sponsor of the pod.
Sponsor.
Oh man, in the booth. You guys got anything before we go?
Yeah, there's not too much in here. I mean, we got a old concert poster. Days. I won't show you, but he kind of looks like a young Sergio Mendes. We got a picture of Dan over there. You'll see one day.
Oh
We'll
yeah,
let out the vote.
Nobody should see that.
we're gonna spiff up the booth
We got to spiff up.
for my boy Wizard Kelly and Johnny Digital.
That's it.
Jonathan Digital. Get it right.
Jonathan Digital. All right, guys. Well, I think until next time, this was a great conversation.
Absolutely.
A lot of fun. I love hanging out with you guys.
Always a good
It's a
time.
blast.
Yeah, it's a blast.
Well, if anybody has any special requests of what you'd like us to cover, like on the pod, I mean, we are always up for some good topics. Otherwise, you're just gonna get whatever we come up with.
Yeah.
But if you have questions, you have topics, reach out, send us a message, talk to us in person, whatever.
Yeah. You can find us on all social media at NSFS Podcast.
MySpace?
Yeah, we got a MySpace
Dang,
page.
Do
Dude.
we really?
Yeah.
Dude, I just
we
you
don't.
gotta ask Jeeves about that, dude.
The guy that
I'll ask
created
Jeeves.
MySpace. I don't think the guy that created MySpace even has a MySpace page anymore, so
No,
Sad.
it's done.
I'll dial up my AOL internet when I
You
get
gotta
home
get
and
the
I'll
CD.
check.
The CD that you used to get from Brooks Pharmacy.
That's it.
Wow.
That's it.
All right, we gotta get out of
Yeah,
here.
we're
Let's
done.
go.
All right, peace.
See ya.
Peace.
The Not Safe for Sunday podcast was recorded in the loft. You can find us on social media at NSFS Podcast. Audio editing by Spencer Barrowman. Video editing by John Walsh. If you'd like to join us for a Sunday service, you can find us at Conquerors for Christ Church, located at 972 Reed Road in North Dartmouth, Massachusetts.